looks like the sun, it doesn't shine for me. Because I'm living yet I can't.
Welcome to the conversation. I'm your host, Anthony McPherson. My guest on the conversation today is Alex Wheatle, MBE, the Bard of Brixton, author and advocate. Welcome to the conversation, Alex.
Thank you for having me. Should I address you as Anthony or Tony?
Take your pick.
Tony. This sounds friendlier.
Right. Let's start from the beginning. Right, Alex, tell me what it was like for you growing up as a child.
Growing up as a child, very traumatic. I was sent to the infamous Shirley Oaks Children's Home that is about 3 or 4 miles east of Croydon. And it was a very brutal existence. It was like a village, if you like, of about 40, 50 children's home cottages. And it was run by Lambeth Council. And the staff in my establishment did not treat me well at all. They physically abused me. And so I grew up basically not trusting adults. I had no family visits because my father, he returned to Jamaica. And when I was born, my mother, she entrusted me with my father, but ultimately my father let me down. And so I grew up very alone and isolated, and I felt that I could not reach out to anybody, including social workers. It was only when I reached 11 or 12 that I began to fight back. And so the people that used to physically abuse me, they would hang back a little because they knew that I would give them what they gave me. But I guess the thing that kept me going was reading. I had a love of magazines and comics from when I was very young, from 5, 6 years old. And at nighttime, that would, keep me engaged and not worry so much about my environment. I could just enter the world of comics and adventure, and books came later. Books came along when I was about 8 or 9, when I managed to get a copy of Treasure Island. And also in that same period, I read Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. So books were my refuge, if you like, of my daily life.
Yes, yeah. Well, Alex, when did you realize that you wanted to become an author?
I guess that was after I served a prison sentence way back when I was 18. This was, the back end of 1981 or the beginning of 1982. I was exploring Black narratives that I'd never done before. And so I was reading about the Caribbean. I was reading about the Black narrative in the US of A and Africa. But when I used to go to the libraries and the bookstores, there was not too much about the Black existence in the UK. There was very little. And all that I really had was Linton Kwesi Johnson's poetry that spoke to me direct, like poems like Sonny's Letter. I used to know a number of Sonnies. I thought, wow, this is about me and my generation growing up in places like Brixton, Tottenham, Peckham, and so on. And so I did wonder, maybe someone should try and fill this gap. And so later on, I started my journey in writing. At first, it was keeping a journal, writing songs, writing lyrics. And then that finally expanded into me writing short stories. And eventually, I wrote my first full novel, Brixton Rock, that was published in 1999. And really, as I suggested before, I guess I did it because I wanted to see myself and my friends and the people who I knew in fiction. I thought they deserved a story too.
Yes, indeed. On a more personal note, you've been quite open about your battle with prostate cancer. Can you tell me, how did that experience impact your life and work?
Yes, the diagnosis was last year summer. And it greatly impacted me, but not just me, my family as well, because I had an asthma attack. And so I was taken to accident and emergency at Luton and Dunstable Hospital, and then went for an outpatient appointment. And the consultant advised me that he wanted to test in other aspects of my health because my wife noted that I had lost quite a bit of weight recently. And so I started to have all these kind of scans. And eventually, I think it was the fifth or sixth test that they recognized that I had prostate cancer in my bone marrow. And so that was a great shock because I guess, like many men of my generation, especially black men, that we kind of turned a blind ear or blind eye to getting tested in your 40s and early 50s, but I never did so because I didn't have any symptoms really that I can recall. I mean, all I really suffered from was an aching back, and I didn't associate an aching back with prostate cancer. I associated it with my work because obviously I sit at my desk for a long time writing and marking university papers and reading university messages and so on. That's my work. That's my day job. So yes, now I regret not getting myself checked out, years earlier. Then I might have avoided what I'm going through now. But I'm going through chemotherapy right now. And I feel that it's important that, especially men of my generation who have gone through this, to advocate for black men to get themselves tested because we seem to be affected by prostate cancer than anybody else. So it's important to get the message out there, even though there's a stigma saying that checks and so on can be quite intrusive. But you can now have blood checks. They can just take your blood and analyze your PSA levels there. And so it's a lot easier than it was before.
Yes, indeed, yes. Something that made sure that I myself, get checked. And, funnily enough, I have an appointment coming up next week. And it's something that you think, oh, it's nothing, or you don't think it's not going to bother me or what have you until it's too late, as you say. But yes,
Right.
I also would advise all black men, in that category to do go and get themselves checked. Yes, indeed, Alex. I mean, your courage in sharing your story is so commendable. I mean, how do you balance writing and, your advocacy work with all what's going on?
It's very important that if you're a relative success in your field, then you have to try and lift others up. Because I remember when I first started writing, when I was trying to get myself published, there wasn't too many spaces available or people available who could show me the right way or show me the right connections, just to lift me up and elevate me and introduce me to a space where I could get very good advice, very good counsel for the career that I wanted to follow. And I mean, this is still the case even today. I mean, my first book was published 25 years ago. Still, young writers sometimes are writing in the dark. They don't know who to approach or where to get advice. Not everyone can go to university or do a master's degree in writing and publishing. And so it's very important that for writers like myself who have made that journey and can make a living now from what I create on the page, it's very important for someone like me to try and help others get upon that ladder, if you like, and advocate for them where there was no advocacy for me when I first started out, 30 or so years ago. And it took me a number of years to get published. And it's painful, because it's your driving ambition. You want your stories to be read and listened to. And it was a very difficult time. And I remember perhaps wanting to give up every now and again because it was too hard. And you probably know, Miss Tony, being an actor, how difficult it is to make a breakthrough. And it's the same like that in many of the creative professions for Black people. And, you have to try and stay in the game and do your best and keep at it. And in those moments where, sometimes it's feast, sometimes it's famine, And in those famine times, we have to just motivate ourselves. Yes, I'm going to make that correction to the manuscript, or I'm going to go to that audition, or whatever it may be. We have to try and keep ourselves going to go on our journey of the thing that we really want to do and really, really love doing.
Yes, indeed, Alex. Yes. I mean, what was your initial reaction when you found out that Crompton Knights was going to be adapted for TV by the BBC?
I was, well, I was overjoyed. I really was, because it was a culmination of many, many years hard work. I mean, I had a novel, East of Acre Lane, that was published in 2001, I believe. And it was optioned by the BBC for 3 years in a row. And then they decided not to go with it or greenlight it, even though 3 scripts were drafted. And then it was optioned by Channel 4. And then the general response to me was that, oh, this is not for Middle England, it's only for Black viewers and so on, excuses really. And so that was the start of my journey of trying to get something made for TV. And the same happened with 2 or 3 other projects that I had, adaptations of books of mine, like The Dirty South, Brixton Rock, and the first of the Crompton series, Crompton Knights, where a production company was very interested, but again, that fell away. And so when I finally had the green light for the Crompton series for the BBC, it was like relief over joy. And finally, at last, I'd made it to the mountaintop, as Martin Luther King would say. And yeah, it was incredible being part of this production and being on hand for any kind of advice that I could offer. Incredible being on set. Tony, I'm sorry I missed your role, but I did manage to get up to Leeds on 2 occasions and watch filming and play a very small cameo for myself. It was very exciting.
Yes.
And so it was a great boost to me, because at the time I was just about to go into chemotherapy. And so that was a great boost to my well-being, to being up there, recognizing that people were adapting my work, and the director and everybody else, they had assembled a fantastic team. And I've seen 2 of the episodes or rushes, and I'm very excited. Everyone seems to be very excited. So I'm looking forward to getting that call about season 2. I'm touching wood for that. That would be fantastic. And to seeing you again, that would be brilliant. So yes, it's very exciting times.
Well, I hope I'm not on the cutting room floor.
I'm sure you won't be.
I mean, how involved have you been in the adaptation process? I mean, have you had the opportunity to influence any of the creative decisions?
I believe I have, Tony. At the very first instance, it was optioned by Noel Clarke, his company. But we know that Noel had difficulties and so on. And so it was shelved for a little while. And then New Pictures decided to take it on, and the BBC were quite happy with that. But in the first instance, I was there at the script meetings. I was part of the writing team. I mean, obviously, my illness intervened, but I was there from the very start, giving my advice, suggestions. Suggestions. So I felt involved the whole way. So yeah, I feel very, very respected in that aspect. That I've always been on hand for any kind of advice that I can offer to the head writer, Archie Maddox, who's a very funny guy. I mean, Crompton has a fantastic steering hand regarding the writing of it. And when I sat in the editing room and watched those episodes, I was just loving it. I was just laughing and enjoying the drama of it. So it's going to be a fantastic show.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it myself. Dear. I mean, are there any aspects of the story or the characters that you're really excited to see brought to life on the screen?
Absolutely. I mean, the young leads, they're incredible. They found some fantastic talent there. But the Crompton stories have come from my own children, if you like. And I lived in South London. And I remember when they were very young, 9, 10, 11, 12. We would hold birthday parties for them. And Tony, anyone in London or any major city knows that kids of that generation, they don't care. 99.9% of them don't care about where their friends come from, where they come from, the Middle East, Africa, Asia. It doesn't matter to them. They're just friends. And so on party days, their friends would come to our home, and they came from everywhere. And it was not even discussed. They were just friends. And so this is the kind of environment where I wanted my young actors to live in, where, you could have a friend who came from Syria, South Africa, it didn't matter. And so that was a core kind of motivation for me to write the Crongton series, where you have these group of friends. They all have different backgrounds, but they're just friends anyway. And of course, they find themselves into scraps and all the things that you might associate with living in London. London has its issues with knife crime, with so many other issues as well. And I wanted to address those issues in a way that, ways that they have to cope with and they have to navigate. And they all have home lives. Sometimes some have more difficult home lives than others, just like everyday life. So I just wanted to reflect that, reflect those lives that sometimes we don't see on TV. Not just sticking at school like Waterloo Road. I just wanted to really examine what goes on behind closed doors with families and so on, going through difficult times and testing times.
Yes. I mean, not forgetting, tell us about your new book that's due out next year, April.
That is the girl with the red boots. And my family, my father's family, they came from a town in Jamaica called Old Harbour, which is not too far away from Spanish Town. And like many places in Jamaica, gun crime is a scourge. And so it's been a problem for many, many years, the amount of guns in Jamaica. You could almost liken it to the knife crime that we suffer here in the UK. And sometimes innocent bystanders, they get, in a way, they get shot, killed. And so this occurs to my lead protagonist of the story, her brother, who's queuing up to gain entry into a bank. He's caught in a crossfire, and the gunman sees her and thinks that she might be a witness to the crime, and go to the police and report what he looks like and so on. So she has to go into hiding, and to go into hiding, she comes to the UK and lives in South London with her aunt. And the thing that holds her together is her love for football. So she starts to play for a football team and so on. All the time, she cannot reveal too much about the circumstances of back home. And so during the story, she has to navigate, trying to keep a low profile and also forge this career in football, and, to keep away and keep out of the gunman's crony sights, if you like. And so I enjoyed writing it, but again, it's addressing something that's quite dear to my heart, where sometimes young people get caught up in violence for no good reason. So I'm trying to explore that in this book. It's got some funny moments too, and I love my football as well. And so for me, it was a perfect theme for me to write about. And I've been to Jamaica many times. So yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. And it's a new adventure for me, because I don't think I've ever written a story surrounding football before, which I've always thought of it, but now I've done it. I feel very proud and can't wait for the book to come out.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Alex. I mean, is there any final words or advice for young aspiring writers or those facing, let's say, their own challenges?
I would say to concentrate. For me, it's something that was taught to me by my cellmate back in prison a long, long time ago in 1981, and he was a very well-read man. His name was Simeon. And if you want to check out more of that story, check out Steve McQueen's Small Axe series, which tells the story of my young life in Brixton and in prison and so on. And he taught me a very good lesson whilst I was serving my time. And he convinced me, told me that, Alex, every doesn't matter your background, how poor you were, or how rich you are. everyone is born with a talent. And once you leave this place, I want you to go outside and find this talent, discover it, and then use it to the best of your ability. And at the time, I was quite aggressive. I was quite obnoxious, and I thought, who is this older man telling me what to do, kind of thing. But now I recognize what he said to me, and what he's saying is right. Sometimes we spend so much time being angry, and, we look at the past and we use the past sometimes as a reason to hamper our future and still be angry. But he said to me, concentrate on your future, concentrate on what you're good at, concentrate on what skills you have, and don't let the past hamper you so much. And so that's what I'd like to say to any aspiring creators out there, or people who want to forge careers on themselves. Don't worry so much about what's happened before, but worry about what you got going for you and what your future might hold for you.
Yes. I mean, Alex, your story is so inspiring. I remember from several years ago when I played you in a role at theatre, and I remember you talking about this same man in prison, the time you spent there, and it was really touching. It really was. And I'm sure a lot of people will be motivated by you. I am.
That's nice to hear. Well, thank you. And it's a small world, isn't it? I mean, here you are. You first played me. I think it was at the Borough Theatre, was it, on Borough High Street? Is that correct?
It was in Borough at Southwark Playhouse.
Right, Southwark Playhouse. Yeah, I remember it well. I came along, and here you are playing the minister in church in Crongton. So hopefully we will enjoy each other's company again. And I'm looking very forward to seeing you on the Crompton series. And trust me, I've just finished another Crompton book, and you play quite a big role there.
Really? Never say never. I'm always there, Alex.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining me on the conversation. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure too.
Thank you.